Knowing what you obviously know about Coach Bryant and the way he's looked at here, Coach Dean Smith passing away today obviously has the same kind of effect on the heartstrings of North Carolina fans. And just kind of speak to what kind of person and legacy he was and he leaves there in North Carolina.
Yeah, I never had the privilege of meeting Coach Smith, but know several people who did, and you really would have to work, I think, to find anybody that had anything negative to say. Just incredible, not just the level of success, but the consistency with it. I think it's 11 Final Fours that he reached, but one of the examples to me that I get in thinking about him, BJ, is the fact that he's an example of just how tough it is to win it all. I mean, you think about this, 11 trips to the Final Four, and yet the two national titles that he won, or if you want to be really picky and say the only two that he won, actually came at the end of ball games when the other team made major mistakes. Georgetown making the pass that hit Worthy right in the chest for the steal of final seconds, and then Chris Webber calling a timeout Michigan did not have at the end of that ball game that kind of clinched it for North Carolina. So he was just a model of consistency, did things the right way, recruited obviously phenomenal players, but then got them to play at an extremely high level once he got them there.
And just kind of spinning off of that, as you were talking about national championships and winning, we're around a program every day that is almost spoiled its fans winning championships and things like that. Just like you said, it's tough to win. It's tough to get to that level. And I think sometimes we might kind of we undervalue just how important and how special it is when you do reach that peak of the mountain, so to speak.
No question. And when I speak to alumni groups or whoever it is at the beginning of each football season, especially is when I get hit with this. But I'll say, look, you got to be really good to be in the conversation at the beginning of the season for a championship of any type. You've got to be great to be in the mix late, but you got to be lucky to win it all. And lucky can mean different things, from avoiding injury to maybe having injuries occur but at a different spot, or the ball bouncing right, or the day that you're not your best, it's against a team that's still not quite good enough to overcome that. So, you're right. I mean, I won't say that we're spoiled necessarily. I think we have an extremely high standard, but there are times that I think we tend to forget as fans, whether it's Alabama football, North Carolina basketball, or whatever sport, whatever school, where there is a tradition of winning, you do forget about how difficult it is to sustain that year in and year out.
And last night in Baton Rouge, seemed like the lucky breaks were falling for LSU. One in particular I recall when I was cutting highlights was a deflected pass that was kind of late in the game that just fell right into Mickey's hands, and LSU scores, and ultimately they win the game. Just kind of recap that game. What went wrong for Alabama to get in that hole, and how disappointed were they when they fell short ultimately?
Well, extremely disappointed, because they invested a lot, especially in the second half, to go from 17 down to make it a 2-point game with, 7, 8, 9 minutes, whatever the number was, and fought extremely hard to do that. But I think while there's disappointment in the fact that they weren't able to overcome it, the frustration lies in the fact that they didn't do enough in the first 15 minutes of the game to keep it neck and neck, so that a rally in the second half wasn't necessary. I mean, Alabama, even though it's obvious we're without their top 2 point guards, or the most veteran point guards anyway, in Ricky Tarrant and Retno Batsahan, point guard play was not really the issue in that game. The issue was in the first 15 minutes. They didn't play with enough intensity on the defensive end and didn't get enough stops, and LSU had it way too easy during that stretch and built what was a 10-point lead at the half, and some of that stuff continued early in the first 3 minutes of half number 2 and got it up to 17. And you just can't do that in this league. There may have been years past where you could, but this is not one of those years. The league is too balanced. It's too good. And if you're not ready to play from the opening tip, then you're going to get beat.
Is this a team, and you're around them more than any of us, but do you see that they're still really fighting hard day in, day out for Coach Grant?
Yeah, I do. I think they have a lot of respect for their coach, but I think they have a lot of pride in themselves. And in the same man, I think you give Coach Grant and the staff credit for the fact that they have instilled something in this team that while they may be lacking in some areas, they've never lacked in fight. There has never been a time where you really saw a team give up. Now, they've gotten beat by numbers you wouldn't want to see necessarily, but they haven't. You would have to be extremely cynical to look at what's going on, and while there may be things to be disappointed in or upset with, you can't say that this team is quitting in any ball game, because if you saw what happened, just as one example last night, there's no way you can say that team is quitting on him or quitting on themselves or by any stretch quitting on this season. That was a missed opportunity last night. That was a game they needed to win, and there have been a couple of those. But at the same time, they're still fortunate that with 8 games to play, some of those can indeed give them, probably enough pop to where they can go to Nashville in the SEC tournament to be in the discussion for an NCAA bid. But they have now set things up where there is a very small margin for error in order to put themselves in that position.
And that was kind of going to be my next question. What is the path to a possible, even talking at this point about an NCAA berth? Is it tournament win or bust? 2 wins at the tournament, win out. What's the path?
VG, I'm really not sure. I do know this. They've got 8 games left, and they are more than capable of winning each and every one of them. That includes a trip to Texas A&M at the end of the regular season. It includes a road game in Oxford against Ole Miss. They're capable of getting that done. They're capable of beating Georgia and Tuscaloosa, but they've got to do it. That's what I'm saying. They miss opportunities as far back as Wichita State and Xavier and Iowa State in the non-conference. They miss opportunities in the league, in Fayetteville, at home against Florida, at South Carolina. But while there are still opportunities, those are closing quickly, and they've got to go win some ball games. And a lot of that, to your point, is going to depend on what happens with other teams. But the one thing they can control is what they do in these final 8 games. And if they take care of that business, then I think they're going to be, again, in a spot where they're at least in the discussion. And then from there, you kind of figure out how much needs to be done in Nashville in order to be an NCAA tournament team. But none of that will matter other than running the table in Nashville if they don't get things done quickly here with what's taking place in these final 8 conference games.
And I guess I'm trying to think of a fair way to kind of word this question. Fans are fans. No one likes to lose. It feels like fans, as we get towards the end of the year with each loss, start to kind of slowly give up on this coaching staff. The fairest way I guess I could ask, how would you respond to someone who is just an adamant Coach Grant needs to go type of person? Because you hear it, you've heard it the last 2 years towards the end of the year. You've got I don't know if it's a vocal minority, but you've got a pretty loud crowd that is not on the Coach Grant bandwagon right now.
Well, here's the thing. It gets back to what we were talking about with expectations. And there is, while most people around the country, when you mention Alabama, they think Alabama football, and that's understandable, that's natural, and they should, based on the 15 national championships and everything that has been done over a long period of time. But even though Kentucky is the bell cow of the SEC and has been for a number of years in basketball, the school with the second most all-time SEC wins is in Tuscaloosa. And there is great expectation for Alabama basketball. There is a passionate fan base that remembers the SEC tournament being basically the Wimp Sanderson Invitational. They remember the 5 Sweet 16s. They remember 3 consecutive SEC titles won before that in the regular season by C and Newton. They remember the NCAA tournament trips and the Elite Eight run by Mark Godfrey. They remember the excitement early in Coach Grant's tenure when in his second year he took this team to a championship game of the NIT, and then the following year took them to the NCAA tournament. And I think there's extreme disappointment and surprise, frankly, that we're in year 6 and there's only been one NCAA tournament game that this team has had under Coach Grant. So it's natural. People much higher up the pay grade than myself will make that determination and evaluation. My job is to call games and to support and to be helpful to the coach of the Crimson Tide, whoever that coach happens to be, whatever sport it is that I'm calling, and that will always be the case. But it's natural to want Alabama to be competitive at the highest levels in every single sport because Alabama makes a commitment, I think, at the highest level where you can contend for championships in just about everything that they participate in.
And speaking of a team that could compete for a championship, you are actually sitting watching the Alabama baseball team as they scrimmage today at the Hoover Met. What is the feeling around this team this year? Is this a team that can make some noise in the SEC?
Yeah, they're extremely excited about it. And Coach Gaspard, I think, in now year 6 in his first 5 seasons has only missed postseason once. They've been in regional play. They've unfortunately had to travel for all of those, and hopeful this year that they can finish the season. Last year at the midway point of conference play, they were right there with an opportunity to win the league and be an NCAA regional host and didn't have a very strong finish. They lose some really key arms on the mound. They've lost 3 huge bats in the lineup. But there is a ton of talent. That one of the things that made that team so strong last year and such a threat was the depth. And they have guys back. Now they have a lot to replace, but they have talented guys that can indeed do that. So they're excited about it. If the starting pitching comes along, I know they feel good about the bullpen. They think they've got some real options on the hill in starting roles, and if those guys can get the job done, they'll be solid again, if not exceptional defensively. And I think there's plenty of pop here in this big ballpark to utilize the speed this team has and really be a fun team to watch on the offensive end as well.